suffer from Sunday sadness because the weekend is almost over? Well, fear it no more, because Sunday is Fun Day on Fox.
Yeah. Let's converge our glasses in merriment.
It's the season premieres of The Simpsons.
Woohoo!
And Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, suck it.
The same old shift on a whole new night.
We're going undercover. You look amazing, but you smell really bad. That's my cologne. Welcome to the Mafia.
And it's all leading to the one-hour Family Guy Simpsons Smash-tacular. Sunday on Fox.
When shopping for car insurance, consider this. Geico has been saving people money on car insurance for over 75 years. So if you're serious about savings, it's simple. Go to geico.com. After 75 years, they know how to save you money.
Thursday night, everybody, as they say in the Dirty Bird. Happy Thursday night, everybody, yeah. I love everybody. Or Friday morning, or whenever it is, you receive More Stories, the number 5 podcast in America in the subcategory of comedy. Are you guys really going to let Mark Maron walk away with this title? We started so strong. Doesn't matter. You know why? Put my name on it. I'm like combing the streets for guests. I'm very lucky. I don't say that as a negative on Mark Maron. I say it as a negative of me. Because I go, wow, people on Twitter have been asking for Barry Katz to come back a lot. And they have gags for him. People are writing like Barry Katz haiku. So instead of going after the John Hams, the Alec Baldwins, the Neil Tysons, the astrophysicists, the Mike Tysons. Why do that? When you can just have a guy drive in from Malibu with 102 fever on Thursday after the rains. Jeez Louise. Cat, should we build an ark? What's going on in the West Side here?
I actually swam over here.
Yeah. Jews don't swim.
I'm so honored that I
beat you to it.
Yes, you did. I'm so honored that I made the cut, that, all those great people, and I was your first choice after those amazing people.
Well, Nick Swartzen's coming by, but he couldn't do it today. Bert's out of town. Tommy's out of town. No, I'm kidding.
I got a great Nick Swartzen story when you're ready.
I'm ready.
You ready?
I just said I'm ready.
This is amazing.
I just said I'm worried about the weight. What are we arguing about?
This is incredible. So when I was representing Nick a long time ago, when I had my office in New York, I remember this. He had done a comedy festival, and he was represented by a manager by Dave Becky, and Dave invites him out on his birthday. I think it's his 19th birthday.
19th
birthday, and he takes him out to lunch. And basically, Dave fires him at the lunch.
Dave fires Nick?
In other words, resigns from working with him.
After a comedy festival?
Yeah, after the comedy festival. And
because of all the vodka? Complaints?
So Nick thought he was, getting the celebratory lunch. And then, so after the lunch, he actually just walked right over to my office, because I always loved the guy. And he said...
So basically Nick got fired at Ribs USA.
Something like that.
In Burbank.
No,
then came across the street, still wearing his bib, and said, diarrhea?
Actually, it was in New York, but that's not the great story. Right. So this is actually for every artist who listens to this podcast to know what it takes to get to the next level. So this was a young kid. One day he calls me, he says, I want you to meet me in your office on Saturday. I said, Saturday? Why can't I wait? He said, I need to come over Saturday. I need to fax something. I said, great. He comes over. He has a backpack. He unzips the backpack. He takes out one of those spiral notebooks. You know the ones where you rip off the pages and all that shit comes flying off of it?
Yeah, chads. Dangling chads we learned from Florida.
Dangling chads.
It's like I'm screaming into this, am I?
So
with Damone from Fast Times at Ridgemont High over here.
So he opens up the notebook, and on the notebook, he has handwritten the front page of what appears to be a screenplay called Suckers. written by Nick Swartzen, Suckers with a Z. And I say, what is that? I start flipping the pages. He has written an entire screenplay by hand. 100-page screenplay by hand. He starts ripping off this thing with all
These
the
little
things
long
falling.
cuts, you know. Be honest with you, 100 pages. They get all quick at 80. 20 pages of special effects. Let the director do his job. Imply his vision.
And so we start, cutting the things off. He starts faxing it, gets done with it. I'm like, who are you faxing this to? He says, I'm faxing it to Jamie Kennedy. I told him the idea. He said, write it up. I'm faxing it to him. I don't really have a computer. He faxes it to him. Ends up going to fax, and Adam and the Warner Brothers studio ends up getting the commitment to make it. It becomes Malibu Most Wanted, and that was the first thing that he ever wrote, and he was
I
a
didn't
part
even
of it.
know Nick wrote that.
Yes. And so that's what I wanted to say was the lesson to any artist out there is that if you're wondering why you're not getting to the next level or how you get to the next level, it's no secret. You take anybody. I'm just going to take somebody obscure. Take Rain Pryor. Richard
Whoa,
Pryor.
You could have said anybody, but you picked Rain Pryor.
This is why I picked Rain Pryor.
You put you with them.
Rain Pryor, obviously Richard Pryor's daughter.
Oh.
There's one time that Rain Pryor was like, holy shit, Rain Pryor. You got to see Rain Pryor when she did her one-person show. It's no secret that she wrote, created, starred in, produced, and did something, and that's when everybody said, hey, I'm not looking at her like the daughter of Richard Pryor. I'm looking at you like you are an amazing artist because
When was that?
Probably about 5 years ago.
Did you see it?
I did not, but I heard all about it, and no, but the thing is,
No, it's just your timing. You're just one of the inadvertently most funny people I've ever met. You're like Martin Short in The Big Picture. Look, I don't know what you do. I've never seen your work. But you're incredibly talented. I'm wrong about these things.
well, this is
It
what
was the greatest show anyone had ever seen. Did you see it? No. But I did hear people talking about it on the street.
But this is what I'm going to say about that.
Yes, Dirk.
Comedians are like grandparents, and you hear when somebody's doing it. In music, if a musical artist is getting a standing ovation in Arcadia, Florida, no one fucking knows about it. If a comedian is getting standing ovations in Arcadia, Florida, you hear about it, everybody knows, and everybody talks about it.
Yes and no. If bands are getting standing ovations, usually it's general admission and there's no fucking seats. Anyway. But gang, yeah, of course you get a standing ovation, Kings of Leon, when the first 800 people are standing on a sticky wood floor at the fucking Audubon Ballroom.
The point I'm trying to make here.
Comics, you really think that spreads when comics get standing ovations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because white comics, for those of you who don't know.
We had to go into race.
I'm going into race.
The first race-free podcast.
I'm sorry.
Even Jeremy Guthrie was saying horrible things about Vladimir Guerrero. I got very uncomfortable.
I'm going into race, but in a good way.
All right.
White comedians who are starting out are the rarest to get standing ovations. It's very difficult as a white comic to get a standing ovation because white audiences are not as giving. They're not as bad to a white comic. Let me rephrase that. White audiences are forgiving of comedy that is mediocre or not as strong as normal. They're polite and they're forgiving. Black audiences are not forgiving of comedians that are mediocre, but they are giving if you are doing something that's extraordinary.
Me and Segura talked about this a lot. And I also think white audiences are more inured to just comedy in general. Like, they just know the rhythm of it, and they're just watch way more sitcoms than maybe black people do. So, Rain, you said, going back, because I'm not going to get a sidetrack, and I don't interrupt as much as I used to when you did the first one. You said that anybody out there that's struggling and trying to do it, the one way to get over and the one way to ensure that you put your name on it, that's what you were going for. And you brought Rain Pryor up as an example, and Nick Swartzen was an example of it.
Always. And so a lot of comedians, they come to me and they say, well, what do I got to do to make it? And I always say, the first thing you got to do, and some of these things we might have touched slightly on, is you got to kill 10 times in your home club, which means that, let's say you're a regular at the Improv in LA. 10 times in a row, you got to go there. You got to have the best set of the night. That means every audience member polled says you're the best. The waitresses say you're the best. The manager, the bar back, the waiters, the comedians who hate you. If 10 times in a row you go on and do that, get a helmet. It's all over. That's the first thing you got to do, because then people will be chasing you like your ass is on fire. So that's the first thing you got to do. And the second thing you got to do is you got to create for yourself. You got to do things for yourself. Why is Whitney Cummings on the air? Well, a lot of people are negative, positive, whatever. The bottom line is she wouldn't be on the air if she didn't write her own script and produce her own script and pitch her own script and do it, or she'd never be on the air. So regardless of what you think of the show, the fact is she's on the air. Now, Ray Romano, on the other hand, he did stand up on Letterman, this is another great story of how things can happen. I was representing Jeff Ross at the time. I don't even know if you know the story. So Jeff Ross does
You could slam a revolving door. The amount of people that come and go.
You don't have to be cruel.
No, I'm fat, and everyone's on good terms.
Great terms. Love these people.
I don't understand. Whatever. Go ahead.
So another thing you can do.
Like who? I'm sorry.
Don't.
No, I will ask Matt. Like, who are you going to from Cats? Like a guy with this much wisdom and insight.
Well, a lot of times, people like, the Chappelles or people like that, they go and they have their own life and family first, and they don't take on anybody else. Some people do, some don't. It's like just the way it is. It's just part of the business.
I did interrupt. You were representing Jeff Ross.
So another way that a comic can really take it to the next level is if you do a set on television that is absolutely undeniable and extraordinary. And what I say by that is that in these days, in competitive times, the set cannot be good, it can't be very good, it can't be excellent. It has to be like a fucking bomb going off.
I've always said when I'll do like a rehearsal for a corporate show or NHL awards, and I say, how was that? And somebody goes, pretty good. I go back and I do it again. I go, I'm not in the pretty good business.
That's right. You can't be in the pretty good business. You can't even be in the excellent business these days because things are so competitive. You joked and said you're the 5th podcast. Well, that's out of God knows thousands and thousands and thousands of podcasts, which means you're in the top 1% of 1%. Not good enough for you, apparently, because...
Oh, I'm fine with it. I don't really
you want whatever, but you want to be... Everybody wants to be the best. So at the time when Jeff Ross was about to do his first Letterman show, Letterman is and I just want to say this because I don't want to get in trouble. Letterman is the gold standard of late night television for comedians. It doesn't mean that Jay Leno isn't an extraordinary comedian and a great person and an amazing show. It just means that for some reason all the comedians feel like if you can do Letterman, then that's the gold standard. And if you can do Leno, that's great too. But normally what happens is it's like a sliding scale. So if there's 10 comedians that do Letterman, normally I would say conservatively 5 to 7 of them are comedians that are the most respected within the industry, and 3 might not be.
Stephen Wright, Bill Hicks.
Yeah, and then if
Brian
you go,
Regan,
and then if you
Mitch
look,
Hedberg.
yeah, and then if you look at the comedians who do Leno, normally it's the reverse curve. It doesn't mean that they're not great comics. It doesn't mean that I don't love them or you don't love them. It just means that if you were to poll the comedy scene as a whole, they would say, hey, I don't have as much cred for this person on Leno as I have for that on Letterman. That doesn't mean that Jay doesn't pull some great ones out of his hat and bring some people in, and they have a great staff and they do amazing things.
Pull Jimmy Norton in regularly.
Yeah, like so another one, Jim
Smart
Norton.
move. I mean, he's up the street from Letterman. I don't know why.
Yeah, so Jim Norton's a great example. And what's really odd about it is that Leno is a juggernaut, is a force of nature. It's the highest rated show there's 2 million more people that watch his show than any other show. It doesn't matter that he went
late night TV.
On late night TV. It doesn't matter that he went to 10 o'clock and failed and came back. He still does it. So people, if you were to poll, let's say, all the comedians in the country and said, and in a hidden poll, not your name is on it. We wouldn't put their name on it. Which show would you rather do for your first set, Letterman or Leno? I personally believe that over 90% would say Letterman. And again, I don't know why per se, because I know Jay. unbelievably great to the comedians. He's so supportive. He's amazing. I always found his stand-up to be amazing. And I always found Letterman's stand-up maybe sometimes when I watched it to be a little more inconsistent and alternative. But, you know, and Leno, when he went on the road, he was the number one guy. He used to go to Nick's Comedy Stop in Boston, sell out every show. He was the only guy who went out consistently. Still works amazingly, but that's the way it is. So what I wanted to go back to Jeff Ross is, so he got a shot to do Letterman, his first set. And the most important thing I said to him was, listen, you got to do something here that's going to just blow people the fuck away, and this is your chance. You don't get that many chances. A lot of people haven't done it. He goes on, has by far one of the greatest sets on Letterman or any late-night talk show that I've ever seen in my entire career. After the show, Rob Burnett brings him up to the office where Dave is and says, listen, we want to develop a show for you. This is how I feel I'm 6 degrees of separation for, by the way, Everybody Loves Raymond. And I'm going to show you how weird things and fate can happen in the business.
Or how you take credit for weird things.
How I take credit for weird things. I hope it didn't sound like I'm taking credit for it, but anyway.
You sound like Little Richard. I invented the Beatles. Shut up. Woo! Good golly, miss. The Rolling Stones. I am the Rolling Stone. Barry Katz. Everything was stolen from me. Raymond, everybody loves Barry. I let him have Raymond. I said, I don't need no Raymond. Let everybody love Raymond because I'm Barry. Oh, I'm boom. Woo! Barry Seinfeld. I changed my last name so there was no breach of contract. Woo! I would have to say X gets the square.
I'd say for the record,
turned into Jack Hay at the end. Sorry.
Ooh, Mary.
For the record, I did say 6 degrees of separation.
I know.
So this is how.
See if I had a Little Richard impression.
You do. It's wonderful.
I have the words. The impression sounded like Jack Hay.
Ooh, I invented rock and roll, baby. Ooh. Ooh. I'm boo.
Oh, I can't do no more. Oh, that's Sobel.
I can't do no more.
Oh, that's another story. Barry Sobel. Anyway, so Jeff Ross gets called up to the
tease him like that, Katz.
office. We'll get to Barry Sobel later. Gets up to the office, and they say, we want to develop a show with you. We want to make a deal with you to do a scripted show around your comedy for CBS. The greatest moment of any comedian's life. You go on, you destroy immediate gratification. That, I get back from Letterman. Apparently the live feed happens in the live feed happens in LA. So at the time that it's happening, like at 4 or 5 o'clock. So I get back to my office, which was right around the corner. I'm just as high as a kite. I get a call from Glenn Padnick, who is the president of Castle Rock Entertainment. He's just seen Letterman on the live feed. At the time, they have Seinfeld on the air, #1 show in America. He says, Barry, I just saw the feed. I want to do a deal with Jeff Ross for his own show. Okay? I'm like, this is unbelievable. I don't know what to do. I tell Jeff. The next day, I do what I think is best. I talk to Jeff about everything. At the time, I get a call from Les Moonves. It's his first week on the job at CBS as the president of CBS, the first week or month. I said, hi, Les, haven't talked to you in a while. I said, Barry, I just want to tell you something. I've already heard from Glenn Padnick at Castle Rock, and I've heard from Dave at Worldwide Pants, and I'm just telling you this. I don't care who you do the show with. I want it at CBS. I say, wow, that's an honor. Okay, I'll let Jeff know that. The next day, we're talking all through the next day, deciding, because you got to decide between Castle Rock, the #1 show in America with Seinfeld, or Worldwide Pants, who's never done a television show, a scripted television show before.
And then complicating matters, that afternoon you got a call from Anwar Sadat.
Yes, that's right.
He said, I want a piece of Jeff Ross.
So that next morning, we both get Letterman jackets in the mail and a note from CBS.
Ooh, nice touch. Very nice.
And
David Letterman jackets. Not like you're on the fucking track team.
Yes, David Letterman jackets. And so
walking
then
around like T-birds.
So then Jeff is going back and forth. He's trying to figure out what to do. He feels bad because he did Letterman, and if he goes with that company, but they've never done anything before, versus the company that has the #1 show and is doing it. He decides to go with Castle Rock. The money was the same. It was like I think it was like $175,000 deal at the time. Decides to go with Castle Rock.
I must interrupt now for the listeners.
Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating? And I'm sure everyone listening, Jeff Ross has the greatest set in a decade of Letterman in a lot of people's eyes. The president, the number one person at Castle Rock Entertainment, calls his manager simultaneously as the feed is happening. I must have this person. Worldwide Pants brings him upstairs in Letterman's office and says, he's not leaving this building until we have a goddamn deal. He's the most talented son of a bitch we've ever seen. Les Moonves, the president of CBS Television, says, I don't give a shit where he goes. That show's going to be on my network. Now, I know everyone listening just did a what the fuck when you said $175,000. That is the biggest misconception, is that we're all just rolling around, just trucking millions. Like, every time I see like other comics, like Nick DiPaolo go, what's easy for you to say? I'm fucking $10 million in the bank. I'm like, really? $10 million? I just played a fucking casino in Reno. I fucking took the Southwest Raider bus up to Reno to make my fucking whatever G's. But here's a guy wanted by 3 conglomerates, and they fucking hash out the magnanimous deal of under $200,000. What would have happened if he was almost as good as that?
Well, I'll tell you.
What happened to the fucking old days? Like, you do one to the Collins set, or no, Patrice said it. Like, I always thought it was like the old days. You do a Carson, you kill, and they just call you and you get $1 million deal.
Well, you didn't back then, and that's a misconception.
Sure, you don't get zero now.
And back then, 15 years ago when this happened, I believe it was, the gold standard for a comedian development deal, the highest you could ever get was like $150.
Yeah.
So now there was one person who got the biggest deal of any comedian at that time, which was well exceeding everything, and that was John DiResta, because he had a one-person show, again, that he wrote, created, produced, and starred in with his own money.
You're basically saying, just do it by Nike. There's no truer words to go out and fucking do it.
Yeah, John got a $650,000 deal at the time when no one was getting $150.
Hate his guts suddenly.
And what he got, how he got it was a 13 episode guarantee at his fee of what it was, $40,000 or $50,000 at the time, and they guaranteed the money regardless if it went or not, and that's how that happened.
And that show was called DiResta.
DiResta.
He played a cop, which he was in real life.
That's correct.
And the New York Post reviewed his show. And with his $650,000 holding deal and $40,000 a week, so you're looking at potentially $2 million first year in your pocket after taxes, 1.8 after it's all hashed out and he writes everything off.
I think he had a partner in the show that he had.
So he's looking at $2 million for this. And the New York Post, out of all the shows they decide to review, because they don't review, like when I'm at Caroline's, they never give a shit. When I'm at Gotham, because I don't really play Caroline's anymore, but when I go do Gotham in New York, they don't come out and, I'm always like, why don't they review comics? There's no review of Gary Unmarried in the New York Times that maybe could have given a little push for the network and helped the numbers. Someone at the Post just says, hey, I just looked at my TiVo and I saw there's a new show called DiResta. You know what I'm going to do? What? Are you going to write about Mary Tyler Moore's 70th birthday? No. I'm going to watch this show at random, and I'm going to end a man's life. The headline for the New York Post, known for its very clever headless body and topless bar, F. Lee Jaley, Dr. No, and Doc Goodnet is no-hitter. Wacko Jacko on his backo. Laffy, Gaddafi, no Laffy. The freaking headline for the John DiResta show in Dewey Defeats Truman font said, DiResta, this show stinks. And then it was a full fucking page of how it stunk, the clothing stunk, the color of the fucking refrigerator stunk. I would love to know who that asshole was.
I remember that because I remember that I think one of the same reviewers did something on Margaret Cho's show.
American Hurl.
All American Hurl.
American Hurl.
No, All American Hurl.
All American
And the show is All American Girl. But I think that's something if you write down.
One of those two people have proven to be an incredible comic.
Well, let's not get into that. A lot of people think that one of those people is an incredible
I
comic.
think you're thinking reverse of what you think I'm thinking.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say anything.
All right.
Because, I like both of them very much.
So John DeResta.
So but again, another example of you write your own thing, you create your own thing, you go. Same with Margaret there. But let's go back to Jeff Ross. Okay. So he decides he's going to go with Castle Rock and
Home of Seinfeld.
Home of Seinfeld. Very disappointing for Worldwide Pants. So the very next comedian who goes on the Letterman show is Ray Romano. Ray Romano goes on. His first set on Letterman, does a great job.
Oh, God, what's going on out here? I'm killing.
They bring him up to the office. They offer him a deal with CBS for his own show.
But here's the real question. Who is the third guy?
I don't know what the third guy is.
Now I got your mind going like, well, maybe they were just like, we need to get in the comedian business. The third guy was like, Tracy.
I don't know, but I do know this without divulging financial terms. The terms for Ray Romano were way, way less than Jeff Ross.
Less than the 175.
Way less. It was
because they were like, we got burned, so why put up that much money?
That's
up front?
right.
Now
it goes. No, well, let me just keep going.
Go ahead.
And it goes to show you.
All my interruptions this time are because it's an actual conversation.
Yeah,
at least
that it doesn't matter what money you make up front. It doesn't matter as long as you're doing something that's great that people want to watch. And so Ray was fortunate enough to meet Phil Rosenthal, who also, I believe, had twins and had a similar lifestyle. And Ray was not
bi-curious.
And Ray was not given the created by credit on that show. Phil denied him the credit.
Based on the stand-up comedy.
It was only based on the story of, which is a big contention for comedians, that you want to create your own show because there's a royalty involved. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
In the end, though, it didn't matter for Ray because he got his revenge later on when he got $40 million a season or something like that it was reported. So, but the bottom line is, another comedian passes on something and another one comes in that wouldn't have been there, and then the rest is history. So that can happen a lot of times.
Wasn't Louis' show Worldwide Pants? CK?
I don't believe so.
First one on HBO? No, I thought Louis was working with.
I did a show with Worldwide Pants with Jim Gaffigan called Welcome to New York, and that was the first one that I know of that got on the air with a comedian. There was the one about the bowling alley. I love that show with something. Oh, shoot, I forget.
You could tell.
I can't believe I'm going blank on this now. I love
three
the show.
People in a garage going,
It doesn't matter, but the Gaffigan was the first.
All right, I know it. Worldwide Pants did the bowling scene from The Big Lebowski. When John Travolta said, you fuck with the Jesus? You pull any shit like that with me? Liam and me?
It was
fuck you up, man.
It was something Ed. Was the show called Ed?
Yeah. Ed TV?
No, it was Ed. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was great. Great
Ed?
show. Anyway, so that's just an example. Again, when you can do a great set, you have choices, but then the choices don't always work out for you, but at least you've done it and you've gotten to the point where you're noticed as a comic, and I think that's the most important thing. And for you, what's interesting about your career, if you don't mind me talking about you for a second.
It's my favorite subject.
And I'm going to, say some things you'll probably kick me under the table. You're a different kind of guy. I don't even know a situation where I've ever seen you write a script for yourself. You've never written a movie for yourself. You've never written a half-hour comedy for yourself. I don't think
Whoa, you don't mean stand-up.
I'm talking about like a scripted show for yourself.
People listening be like, I knew he stole his act.
No. Most young artists they're writing, they're doing. You never did that. You were always like, listen, find somebody who I can do it with, who I don't have to sit down there by the computer and do it myself, and I'll make magic. But you never were the kind of person that wanted to do that, and you're a rarity because very few comedians make it these days without writing.
Well, I've written books.
I know you've written books. I'm talking about writing scripted material,
right?
And
I don't know how.
Yeah, well, it's like a fear that a lot of comics have, that they get down with final draft and try to do it and make it work. And
it's like when you get a new phone or a new computer, you put it off because you're like, then I got to fucking learn Microsoft Word.
Yeah, and because
Excel
and because you've been doing it your way for so long, Like, getting you to do a podcast was like literally like you had to be a dentist to get you to do a podcast because you wanted to do it. You kept saying you wanted to do it. You were like, fuck, I want to get this podcast this week or do it. But when it came down to it, you had to do it on your own time, on your own terms. And when you started doing it, you realized what an inspiration it's been for so many
Margaret Thatcher
people.
once explained the United States of America and me in the same sentence. They always do the right thing once they've exhausted every other option. I say that to my wife often, like, why'd you do it? I'll do the right thing. Just let me exhaust every other option first.
Yeah, so you're the kind of guy in your career, and I've always found this, is that I'm going to go on a limb here. Your career is based on those moments, those incredible holy shit moments where you've been given an opportunity to do something and you carry things in a way that it exceeds the expectations of the viewer or the person watching. It could be all the way back from MTV, those days to Last Comic Standing, which never was as good, never was as highly rated with anybody else but you on it. And it wasn't because Bill Bellamy or whoever it was, or Craig Robinson weren't good hosts. It was because you always added this thing, this extra intangible that the audience understood and knew, and you weren't just a host.
That audience knew when I was up there doing stand-up that I owned a part of that show.
Well, they could have.
And I wasn't going to let that fucking ship take on water.
They could have. But also Gary Unmarried. Like, I look at Gary Unmarried, and I'm going to go on a limb
still
here.
be on the air.
I'm gonna say something about Gary Unmarried, which you're not gonna like. A very soft, non-edgy,
correct,
CBS sitcom.
No, I mean, it is what it was. It was a family sitcom.
A family sitcom. One of the least respected kind of sitcoms out there by comedians.
Touching the machine.
Sorry. By comedians, because comedians don't get respect.
Do you think I give a fuck? If
I know
Jim
you don't.
Gaffigan's at a diner going, I don't like the Gary Unmarried.
I know you don't give a fuck, but deep down, every comic, 1%, wants to be loved. But the point is, that show was on for 2 years. With anybody else, that show would have been on for 6 episodes.
You think so?
But it was on for 2 years because you like carried the show. You're like I say this to anybody that'll listen as a comic, and a writer or a creator or a showrunner. If you're gonna make it, you have to be a leader of men. You have to go into a place, and even if you're not, you have to go in and you are the fucking guy. There's a new sheriff in town. Sort of like Gil Younger came into Action when he directed Action that time. And it was this thing where it was like, holy shit, who is this guy? And he's taken over, and this is a whole different kind of thing. And when you went into Gary Unmarried, even when your first table read for Action, you went in, nobody's expecting anything. Gary Unmarried, we're negotiating the contract. People are waiting in the room to do the table read for 45 minutes until we negotiate the last point of that. You go in, people are waiting, they're pissed off, whatever, and you went in and you just were a leader. And that's what people saw in you, and a network, when they see that in somebody, they realize that, hey, if we're going to be betting $1 million, $2 million a show on somebody, we're going to be betting on a guy who's a leader, who's a guy who's going to take us to the promised land, and a guy who's going to be able to promote the show and really kick ass. And so that's what I feel it was for you. But you've never been the traditional kind of person ever, and doing that. And if a comic said to me, why don't I just do it like Jay Moore, I'd say, you're in deep shit if you do it like Jay Moore. And the reason being, and I'm not going to let you talk here, the reason that is because you've done it as a guy who goes in, and you're the only guy in history, white guy in history, that's hosted a game show, a reality show, and after that is able to book significant acting jobs. No one else has been able to do it. Because your acting skills and your Kreskin-like ability to walk in a room with a casting director or director, or even when Clint Eastwood isn't in the room and he has to watch 150, 200 tapes, for people who would pay $100,000 to do the Clint Eastwood movie, you go in and you figure out a way to blow people away. And that's a hard thing to do as a comedian, to be able to act like that and know the instincts. As you know, in terms of comedy and acting, it's like a world-class swimmer trying to run a quarter mile and a world-class quarter mile trying to swim a 100-yard dash. It just doesn't mix, but you're the kind of guy.
Is there a quarter-mile race that I don't know about? That's a pretty quick
4:40,
race.
I'm sorry, whatever it's called.
I don't even know. You might have been right. It just seemed very short.
But the bottom line is that, so you're a guy, stop touching the machine. Anyway.
Bartholomew Katz.
But you're the kind of guy who is able to book significant acting jobs. And as a comedian, if you intend to make it, like, besides the writing and creating, if you can't go in the room and book significant acting jobs, you're never going to get to the level you're going to get to. There's, and you're in the situation like, Bill Hicks, and that's a different world. Yes, he was a guy who didn't book significant acting jobs. Carlin didn't book them until later. But that's a different world. In today's world, I remember when Charlie Barnett came into my office, the greatest street performer of all time, who has since passed away. And he used to do 4-hour shows in the park, in Washington Square Park. And he came into my office one day in an afternoon. It was a Friday afternoon. He said, Barry, I just came back from the theater. I went to see New Jack City. I said, oh, how was it? He said, Barry, Chris Rock played a better crack addict than I'm a crack addict, and I am a motherfucking crack addict. And Chris Rock at the time was a little skinny, 90, 100-pound guy who just stood there with the mic in his hand, reading off a notepad on the stool.
Right.
And for some reason, he went onto that set, and he brought everything inside him that he had, and he put a performance together that was extraordinary. And that got him noticed as an actor and was able to get him to the next level in terms of that thing. And that's what you've been able to do. But that's a rarity these days. So as a comic, you got to figure out a different way and to be able to do everything.
Is this also a roundabout way of you telling me to get off my ass and write my own show?
Maybe.
Seriously.
Roundabout? No, actually it wasn't premeditated.
But I mean, I really think I could sit, like Nick and I have sat and we've talked scripts through almost in their entirety. Recruiter, House on Fire, a feature film and a show. And we always have funny show ideas. But it's not like SNL where you say, like when Johnny DiMaggio, and I was complaining, I don't know how to write a sketch, and he grabbed me and said, smoke a joint, go home, and make believe you're a fucking sketch writer. And I just did it. With a script, like when I read other people's scripts, it's like they describe the trees, the way the wind's blowing, and the cars, and I don't know why you explain what someone's wearing when they come into the kitchen, but you don't explain what they're wearing when they show up at the PTA meeting. What kind of car, like weird shit, like how the seatbelt's twisted. Like it entails to me so much minutia that I'm a fucking body and head puncher. I'm going for the KO. So a show like Recruiter, which is already registered, so don't steal it, a-holes. I know what I want him to be, and I know how I want him to behave. I've written out the recruiting pitches. And stuff like that. But I think, in my mind, I believe that I need a guy or girl to come in that knows that stuff, that bizarre scale. It's almost like the ribs, bones, and scales, and I just fucking put the guts in it.
But then you can find somebody, and you mentioned, and I want to say something that's also a sensitive issue, because your wife is unbelievably talented in so many ways as a writer and creator, and then I always say this, the openings to the show Nikki were one of the most unique and original things that
they were dancing
that I've ever seen on television. And she worked with one of the greatest showrunners, Bruce Helford, and magnificent. But the thing is, what's hard for you as a person who is in a relationship with somebody that talented, you don't, as a comedian, you don't get the respect that you deserve when you write with somebody else. You don't see Louis C.K. writing a show with somebody else. Right. You don't see, I I mean, I could name Whitney Cummings writing the show with somebody else. She creates the show on her own, and then she brings a staff in.
Is that how that went? I just
That's
figured
how-
they built a show around her.
No, she wrote the script.
And by the way, everybody listening, lay off. She's one of the funnier people you could ever spend time with.
She's one of the hardest.
She's like a guy.
She's one of the hardest working people when she started.
And she can take a punch.
She can take a punch when it comes to stand-up. Because what happened when you start off as a woman doing stand-up, maybe I'm saying something that's going to get me in trouble, but
Here I go again.
it's so much harder than a guy. It's 10 times harder than a guy, because what happens is the girls don't want to laugh at you because they don't want their date to look at you a certain way. And let's face it, on the other side, they don't want to laugh at you either. And so you got to go on and you got to be a certain way and make your material
I disagree.
work. Okay.
And I'm interrupting on purpose. If you're funny, no one has any choice whether or not they laugh at you. When I walk out, the goofy white guy at 22 years old from MTV's Lip Service, or whatever, 20 years old, and I go out on stage to SUNY Farmingdale, an all-black 2-year school, where they go to the comedy show for the or SUNY Delhi, where they go to the comedy show, because we're going to ruin another guy.
I remember I booked Daryl Hammond after you to do that gig.
At Delhi or Farmingdale?
At Farmingdale. And he went on stage and he gutted it out and finished the set, and he threw up after the show. And he called me up. He said, "Barry, don't ever book me in a place like that again. I don't know."
SUNY Farmingdale is a place where you walk out on stage. It's a predominantly black school, and they go to the comedy.
I don't know if it's that way now, but I mean, it was then.
Well, it was 15, 20 years ago. God, we've been doing this a long time. And you would walk out on stage and they go, "Motherfucker, you suck!" As you walk to the mic.
Yeah.
You're already just, whoa. And that's why they went to the show. SUNY Delhi.
You used to open with a rapping cow.
I did. I used to do a rapping cow in my act. My name is Bessie. You look at the menu. I'm proud of it. I was a child. I was 16 years old.
Then why did you do it last week?
Well, because I was bombing. You look on the menu and it says beef medallions. Is that really something happening out there? Has anybody seen a cow wearing a big Mercedes medallion around its neck? LL Cool Cow out there walking around. My name is Bessie. I'm white with black spots. I sleep standing up, not in a cot. I wear a bell. You can all go to hell. Surrounded by manure, so of course I smell G. Some people think of cows. Mine is in the gutter, so all you humans can suck my udders. That bit killed harder than walking has ever killed. People lost their minds like Arsenio was waving his fist.
Used to do an Arsenio impression, too.
That was my first holy shit moment on stage when I realized I could act on stage. Anyway, we'll get that if you want. But SUNY Farmingdale, you walk out and they're like, "You suck, motherfucker. This motherfucker's corny." And then they would heckle each other during your show. It was like being at medieval times. And you were the green section in its entirety.
Yeah.
And I went out at SUNY Farmingdale and I had taken a train out there. I was tired and I said, well, I can't do my stupid bits. So I think Rich Voss is another guy. There's very few white comics that will tell straight up black, "You're so black, Mama Joe."
Yeah.
And I remember going, wow, it's nice to see him moving his lips when he's not trying to read. I said to a guy, and they were like, "Oh shit, what the fuck was that?" And then another guy said, "Man, you're so white." And I go, "Well, let me interrupt you." And I said, I'll never forget this. I said, "You're so black." I've been on stage. I just got to the mic. Okay? Not 30 seconds. If you took your pulse to see what your pulse was, this has all happened before you hit 30. And I said, whoa. "You're so black," and I leaned down like I was talking to a child. "If I poured water on your head, coffee would come out your mouth." And I was in. And that was it. I never went back. Because I only knew 5 "You're so black" jokes.
Oh, Jesus.
So how do we even get
We were
on that?
talking about women in comedy and how...
So my point being, They went there to bury me. To praise Caesar, not to bury him. They went out there to kill me. And when Lisa Lampanelli goes on stage, Lisa Lampanelli goes on in those roasts, no one goes, wait a minute, she's a woman, I'm not so sure. Or
I'll tell you why they...
Hold on. Well, I know what you're going to say why, but that's why I'm going to use a different example. Who's the gal that just did the Charlie Sheen roast? Blonde girl used to dance.
Amy Schumer.
Amy Schumer went up and killed. No one gave a shit if she had a vagina, tits, if she could give head, if she puts out, is she gay, does she smoke grass, does she just want to hang out? All they knew was there was a visceral reaction from what came out of her mouth and what came out of my body when she spoke. So I do agree with you that women have to work a little harder, but I also think they've dug themselves a hole from being bad.
Well, it could be. I mean, it could be. There's a lot of... When I had this conversation...
That's why I wanted... I'm sorry. That's why I wanted to say nice things about Whitney, because she's fucking funny. If you're hanging out with her, she's great.
Always funny, great with people, and an incredibly hard worker, and is fiercely loyal to giving people opportunities and fighting for people. Chris D'Elia is on the show. She wrote the show for Chris. And that's another thing. If you're somebody who's a comedian who gets your own show, you have to fight for what you believe in. And if you don't, you'll be steamrolled and you'll never have a shot. And she fought for Chris. She fought for the people
We already
involved.
talked about Gary Unmarried, Barry.
Well, that's an example. No, I want to talk about Gary. This is an example that I wanted to go back to.
For some reason, Al Madrigal's mad at me about Gary Unmarried.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second, too. But
Al's mad at you, man.
But the reason why Gary Unmarried, in my humble opinion... You did not have as good a shot as Whitney or Louis or any of these people is because you were a hired hand.
Right.
You were a hired hand, and you didn't care whether you were a hired hand or not. You're like, listen, hire whoever you want. I don't give a shit. Just show me the script.
Oh, no. Those motherfuckers were hired. I would have loved to have been in the process of hiring people.
But you weren't. You took the job knowing you already weren't.
Right, but I also took the job thinking that CBS would go, well, we got these 3 people to play your wife. What do you think?
Well, don't think, because you're not an executive producer. You didn't create the show. Why would they give it to you?
When I'm on TMZ next week for a racial slur, I'll remember Barry Katz telling me, don't think.
But the point I'm trying to make is that...
What do you want me to say, Barry? That February 3rd, I'm at the Borgata, and then February 4th, I'm at the Foxwoods Casino, back to back? Or do you want me to say that December 15th through 19th, I'm at the Irvine Improv? Because I'll say those things.
No, I don't want you to say that.
All right, but come see me at the Borgata February 3rd and at Foxwoods February 4th. There's no fucking commercials on this show, so I'll promote me.
That's no problem with that. We'll get back to it.
So when you're a comedian.
So that's the thing. When you're a comedian, your best shot is to fight for people. So all you comedians who also have a development deal right now with a network right now for next year, do not think that you can't fight for what you want. Because the latest example being Whitney, because she's the only comedian that got on last year with her own show. Fought for Chris D'Elia, he's on the show. Fought for Dan Levy as a writer on the show, got him on the show. Fought for 2 other Matt Harowitz on the show, got him on the show. Fought for Sam, I'm sorry, I forget his name now. How horrible is that? He wrote on the New Year's Eve
Catholic guys.
Thing with her. Fights for people, gets them on. You get your voice in the show. You get what you want in the show, and you have people protecting you. And that's how you do it. And Louis' show, Louis was a unique situation where he took less money, doing it all himself, writing, producing, doing it. The guy probably works 100 hours a week, but he got to pick what he wanted. He had creative control, and he lived and died by it. And guess what happened, folks? It's a fucking success. What a shocker. A guy gets his own voice out there, gets to say and do what he wants.
Writes it, produces it, directs it, acts in it.
Yeah. And that's
edits it.
And edits it. That's what it's all about. I mean, so Whitney's show, whether it succeeds or fails, regardless, she goes out, she writes her thing, she executes her vision, and it doesn't matter if you fail or if you succeed, to be honest with you, as a comic. If you're doing your own thing and making it happen, if you do fail, you're going to come back again and you're going to do your own thing. And you're going to look at Louis. How many times has Louis failed with a show that was very well received?
Once.
Like the Louis show on HBO, I love the show.
Like
Again,
Louis.
Put all of his friends in it, like Rick Shapiro and Jim Norton and all these people controlled it. It didn't work. Hey, so what? He did it. He got respect for it and went on to the next thing. And, that's the way it works. And if you're a comic out there, that's the way you got to do it. You got to fight for doing things on your own, creating your own content.
But I was a hired hand on action too.
I know. That's why I'm saying you have broken the rules all the way through your career. And so if anybody's saying to follow what you've done, it's going to be a rare shot for them to succeed, because that's not how it's done.
Basically, I better write Recruiter tonight.
No. You could write it tonight, but
does it behoove me to talk about what it is on the podcast?
You can talk about it, because
just fucking steal it.
No,
or did we already?
No, we already put it
get
together.
Involved with enough people where we're protected.
Yeah, you're protected.
I want to play the world's greatest football college recruiter that ever lived, and he never cheats. And he's a horrible, horrible alcoholic. It's just that when he gets in someone's living room, he is this magical guy. And it stems from two things. When I saw Nick Saban in The Blind Side, he went into Sandra Bullock's house and he said, hey, I really like this, whatever, Armenian tile. And I noticed that's quite a Birkin bag you have there. Like, he knew everything about the family. He knew everyone's names. And I went, wow, that must be what Nick Saban does constantly. And then also Jerry Maguire, when he goes to make up with Renee Zellweger, he walks into the living room doing that woman's group and he pauses and he's taken aback in his own living room because he says, this used to be my thing. I'd walk into a living room, and he leaves it as that ellipses. And I think what he was trying to say, well, I know what he was trying to say is, when I walked into a living room, I dominated that shit, and no one ever said no. And all of a sudden, I'm out of my element. So I thought, what if there was a college recruiter who's a hired gun? He doesn't work for a school, and any college will pay him any amount of money because no matter where he goes, he can flip. He can get a fucking Mormon kid to go to Notre Dame. Like, he's got his speech. And these weird, but he never cheats. That's what I love about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great concept, and I think it will be fantastic, and I think it will go.
The good news with that is, the older I get, it behooves me. Like, I said, used behooved twice in fucking 10 minutes like a jerk. If I'm 50 and I finally get that thing off the ground, it'll work better. I'll have gray hair, have a nice belly.
But that's the thing
All
about.
right.
And that's the thing about you that's,
Anyway.
again, you do break the rules. And even though what I said to you about, hey, you go out, if you write your own thing, you get the respect. If you write it with somebody else, you don't get as much respect. I know you. That doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter, because you will work with somebody who's talented. You'll write something with Nikki. You'll do it with Nikki, and it'll be together with Nikki. And even if in the world of comedy or whatever, it doesn't get as much of a notice like you were do it yourself. What's important for you is to work with great people and do what you want to do and what's in your heart to do. And you're a rarity when it comes to doing things in a different way, and it's always worked. I don't know of anybody else. Again, can you name one other host or who hosted a game show or reality show that still books significant acting jobs? Can you name one person? Now, consequently, not to get race in this,
Bert Convy.
Showtime at the Apollo, if you're a black host, you are going to be a fucking star. Showtime at the Apollo, Cosby,
Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey, the late Rick Aviles, who was a great actor. Mark Curry, who did Hang with Mr. Cooper. Whoopi.
No.
I'm just trying to think now who else hosted. But there's like all people who got to host became television stars and film stars, but white hosts, they get ostracized by the business.
Especially white hosts at the Apollo.
Yeah, so you're a rarity in that. I can't even name anybody else. So that's the thing that's fascinating. So I wouldn't.
Colin and I spoke about this when he was on the podcast. Not my biggest fear. I won't ever say what my two biggest fears are, but one of my biggest things that I dread would be a better way to put it, and a worst case scenario is for me to work super hard on a labor of love, a passion project, a script, a screenplay, and then shop it and nobody gives a shit. To me, that is truly a life wasted. Like, that's a year of your life. And people go, well, it wasn't wasted. You got to write. Fuck that. Like, that's not fun to sit down and write and create all these things. It's only fun to create all these things if you can then shoot it out and have it embraced by other people that can enjoy it and share it with their friends. To just simply have 6 scripts that nobody cares about, to me, that's so sad. That scares the shit out of me.
Well, and that's the reason.
So I like
and
to know
that's
that
the reason
somebody-
why you're not doing it.
But if someone says, yes, if you write a show like The Recruiter, we're like Jeff Ross with Worldwide Pants and Castle Rock, we're in. And we want it on CBS, I'd be fucking writing right now as I talk to you.
What happens if you shoot the pilot, doesn't get picked up?
Doesn't matter.
Why doesn't it matter?
Because somebody shot the pilot. Because somebody said,
But
yes,
nobody sees it.
Sometimes it's a good thing. Then you move it to someplace else.
I think that's the biggest thing that you said that's everybody listening should look into is that
You okay there, bud?
if you fear, I was about to sneeze, sorry. And I wanted to touch the machine so it'd make a noise so I could sneeze. If you have fear of that as a young comic, or then you're in these days, you might as well just fucking quit the business. If a young comic said that to me, I'd say go work another job.
How about this for when, like, Patrice had a revelation during this podcast, and he goes, "You know what I just realized? I'm fucking lazy, and I got to change my life." Like, he had this huge. That's like I think I've been very good about not promoting the Patrice podcast because I don't want people to think I was capitalizing on the poor guy being ill. But like Patrice saying that and then having a stroke was devastating. I mean, it's devastating anyway. But in that podcast, he realized I handled the office completely wrong. My tenets and morals and mores that I live by are completely askewed because I'll make excuses to not do things simply because I don't want to do them. And then he and I had this conversation where I'm like, every project you do, 99% of the people that will ever see you do stand-up won't see it. No one in my show last night saw fucking More Sports. No one in my show last night saw The Ghost Whisperer, but you got to do enough boxes and check off enough things, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian. You got to cover all these bizarre bases. Bravo, CBS, ABC, NBC, Late Night, Tonight Show, Jay Leno 16 times, this, Stand Up, Last Comic Standing, where enough of those trickling in people equal one big, huge room.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people at your stage of the game, comedians who've been doing comedy between 10 and let's say 25 years, you say to them, look, you should film a sketch that you put up on YouTube. They're like, oh, fuck that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do anything like that. And you could talk to them and they've never done it. But then you think to yourself, okay, Will Ferrell, the guy did $400 million movies in a row, yet he's filming his child with a phone book.
I want the fucking rent.
He's doing a thing that's shot with a handheld camera that looks like it's shot by a high school student. 100 million people later, why is he doing it? He doesn't have to do it. He didn't get paid for it. Zach Galifianakis, why is he doing Between Two Ferns? Does he need it? Does he have to do it? Is he getting paid for it? No. It's like you said. He realizes that it's not just about that, and you have to get the audiences, the future audiences, to be with you for the next generation and the next group that aren't going to the movies.
Well, that's sort of like my Real Housewives of New Jersey writing.
Exactly.
Which, by the way,
you're the only person who's ever hosted Watch What Happens Live.
Oh, I wish that was my job. I could do that twice a week for the rest of my life. Live in New York, just sit in the clubhouse. Your guests are sipping cocktails and getting pie-eyed.
I want to say,
like Real Housewives of New Jersey, I didn't get paid for that. That's something like people go, why aren't you doing the Housewives that hit me up on Twitter, JMore37? Why aren't you blogging for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? Why aren't you blogging for Real Housewives of Atlanta? When Bravo says, hey, you're going to do Atlanta, right? Atlanta's coming up. You go, okay, well, I just did it for free. So, like, hey, Llama, how about a little something for the effort? And their comeback is, well, we don't really have any money. You go, well, you know what? I just gave you a year's worth of content because I had fun. And then you get to a point where you go, I kind of thought this would pay off a little. Like, I'm not asking for $175,000 from BravoTV.com because I love Bravo. I watch all their shows. And Andy Cohen's a personal friend. And if I ever go gay, he's first on the list.
Well, I think you did get paid in a sense that more audiences came to your shows, and in that way, it might have helped you a little bit.
You think you'd be at the Borgata February 3rd? Or at Foxwoods February 4th? What is interesting to me, and I want to circle back on this, is in this conversation, and this is why I consider you, well, we're obviously best friends, but You talked to me. You and I had a conversation about our children a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
You were right. You were completely right in what you said. And the fruit that grew from that tree that you planted in me has been enormous. And I love you and thank you. And it just dawned on me that I never told you. Like, you gave me advice, and I remember I was in a hotel room in Dallas going, Cats, get the fuck out of here. That's a stupid. I'm not doing that. I did it once. Tree of life. Like, God opened his fucking lights and shined them on this family. And that's because of you. You were right.
Oh, man, thank you so much.
Thank you. You were right. I went to Ralph's yesterday with the baby and with Jackie, and the baby was in the baby Bjorn, facing out, and Jackie's walking in front of him in his karate outfit. And finally, my 9-year-old son, awkward, who just wants to make me laugh because I'm a comic, but he's so horribly unfunny, has this fucking 7-month-old Billy Hayes crazy laugher. Like, he goes, look, Meredith, oranges! And the baby goes, ah! And I'm going, fucking cats. Nailed it.
Wow.
And those of you listening are like, well, what is it? It's none of your goddamn business. Just to know that he's a good man.
I will say this.
But also, what I realized in this conversation is I right now at 41 years old, having just played the Nugget in Sparks, Nevada, and, playing, Borgata and, Foxwoods are not really in that.
Enough with the plugs.
No, that wasn't
I'm kidding. Go on.
I joke a lot, like, hey, I'm 41. I'm standing in front of a brick wall. There's a fucking banana with sunglasses, and it says giggles over my shoulder. Not exactly how I thought my career was going to go after a Clint Eastwood movie, after a Tom Cruise movie, after starring in a Jennifer Aniston movie, after doing Mafia with the people that do Airplane, after 25 movies, after having my own sitcom. And right in this conversation, I realized I am standing while the business is on a the moving sidewalk in the airport, and all these people that are writing for themselves, and I'm the fucking curmudgeon walking like I'll do it myself, and everyone's just going past me. You just now opened my eyes. The business is passing me by. I have to change. Bill Belichick suddenly is saddled with 1 wide receiver and 4 tight ends. Guess what? Bunch formation, everybody. Gronkowski, go deep. We're the fucking Patriots. Mighty, mighty Patriots. No one can cover a 6'8" ape.
I just, what you're saying is...
You just blew my mind.
Well, I
Look at the game tape!
I'm just trying to move the rock up the hill.
How the fuck you gonna be great if you don't study greatness? Literally.
Well, this is what it comes down to, and I don't know where we are in this podcast, but I believe it's all about breaking the pattern. And if you, let's talk about this just if you don't mind. How many people do you know from 10 years ago that, let's say, drinking a beer every day, and 10 years later you run into them or you know them, they're still drinking a beer? How many people you know that are smoking cigarettes 10 years ago, you see them today, they're smoking cigarettes? How many people you know that are in and out of relationships 10 years ago, 10 years later they're in and out of relationships? And so it's the same with comedy. How many comedians you know that 10 years ago they couldn't book a fucking acting job, 10 years later they still can't book an acting job? How many comedians you know from 10 years ago still can't get a significant late night shot on television, 10 years later they still can't? People who've never sold one of their scripts, they can't sell their scripts. But if you break the pattern, and you going back to Rain Pryor, and I'm not saying that, I'm not endorsing her or not, I'm just saying the one time that she broke the pattern, it's no coincidence that she got respect and had people noticing. The one time that, Mike E. Winfield from Sacramento does Letterman, and everybody knows about it because an African-American kid who looks like Jimmy Walker with material like Dave Chappelle destroys. Everybody talks about him doing it. The one time Ali Wong does Letterman or whatever it is, and people say something about it. Then she books the Chelsea Handler show as an actress. People talk about it. She changed the pattern. She was just a comic doing her thing, and then she changed it. For you, if you start writing things and doing things, you're going to change the pattern. It's going to open up, and it's going to unlock the key to everything. And it's
Well,
the
my
same
fear
with
is
every
being
artist.
like Colin Quinn.
Forget
having,
the
like, a
fear.
manifesto at home.
Forget the fear.
I am gonna. Who forgets fear better more than me?
Well,
I'm just speaking candidly. The reason, like Colin Quinn he looks like John Nash, A Beautiful Mind. He's got fucking 14 feet. He's a goddamn hoarder of his own scripts. St. Anthony's Bones. Come on, Colin. You could have,
I think the thing is, for most comedians, if they were to rely on the money they made from acting, they'd be homeless.
Yes.
If they were to rely on the money they made from writing and selling scripts, they'd be homeless. The key to being a successful comedian and getting to the level of everybody you want to get to is to have an equal balance. In football, it's 50% running plays, 50% passing plays. You are an example of somebody who, if I were to add up all the money that you've made in your lifetime, I would bet that it's very close to 50-50. 50 stand-up, 50 film and television, and on-camera stuff and endorsements. That's something, and you're doing it the old school way. Chris Rock, if I'm to add it up, I
90,
bet...
10.
No, I don't think so, because he's done a lot of movies, and he's done a lot of television shows, and he's done a lot of stand-up.
Yeah, but I think his stand-up would complete... Anyway, sorry.
But the point is, his stand-up is phenomenal, but the point is you have to have that balance. And as a comic, when you're starting, that's what you want to do when you're starting a career. Don't just put all your time into stand-up comedy. Put as much time into the acting. Pretend, get a video camera going in your house and just pretend you're doing acting scenes. Do acting scenes in your house alone. Get into groups. Do whatever it is. Get into writing groups if you're afraid of it. So you can do everything as you're moving all the cylinders of the engine together to be productive, and you'll take it to the next level.
You said earlier about leading. You have to be a leader. But like Jim Gaffigan's a guy who I find hysterically funny, and as do many people, because he's playing theaters. Not a leader
he's
at
not,
all.
He's not a leader, and
He's
that's
a complete type B personality.
And that's okay, because there are exceptions to the rule. And there are exceptions to the rule. And if you were
Brian Regan, type B.
Yeah. And if you were to ask those people, they would say, hey, I have the ability to lead, and I can lead. And they probably could, but to this point,
those two definitely not.
They're not.
They wouldn't say that.
I don't know, but I'm just saying. Jim Gaffigan is an incredible, serviceable person. He's a great actor. Again,
yeah, I think he's underrated.
Oh, he's
like you can
phenomenal.
put him in any of those movies, any movie. Yeah, he should be a brother in like Rachel's Getting Married. He would steal it.
Meanwhile, Brian Regan, as far as I know, has never booked a significant acting job in his entire career.
I think Otto and George have been on camera more than Brian Regan.
Yeah. Does that mean I have less respect for Brian Regan? No. I'm just saying that, the more you go in your career, the harder it is to be able to break that pattern.
But don't you think there's guys like Brian Regan that truly just want to be on a tour bus and go out and make $3 million a year telling jokes?
I can't speak to him. I don't know, but I'm sure there are certain comedians who would want to do that.
Or do you think in the back of every comic's mind, no matter what, there's no way they don't lay in bed and go, what if I was on Brian on NBC's Thursdays right after The Office? Or do they just go, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to go out and tell my stories and my jokes. It's an interesting thing to ponder.
I think that you're that's bad. Have we talked about did we talk about the meeting we had with a prominent Disney executive?
Eisner?
Yes.
When I sold more sports?
Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
So this will give you an idea.
Oh, real quick about leading, and then we'll get over there.
Yeah.
I remember one day I was on Action, and it was like we filmed 13 episodes, but for some reason only 8 are on the DVD.
I thought 13 were.
No, the Ice Cube one is not in there. There's a bunch that they're out. I think when the girl got super fat and they had to wear prosthetic makeup because she ate too much. I don't think that's on it. And I don't make any money if you buy Action, so don't. Also, the Audible link that I've been saying for the last fucking bunch of months. If you listen to this and then hear those, I said it wrong, and I don't make any money. So just you can lay off of that. Just come see me do stand-up, and we'll have a great time, and I'll massage your calves while you piss at the urinal, ladies. So the thing about Action was we were on, like, episode 6, and that was some long balls-ass days, like 15 hours. A lot of it got rewritten on the fly, and speeches, long speeches. It was like doing a soap opera almost. And it was one night where we were talking about a movie, and that was the scene. And I was so fucking tired because it was like a Friday, and on Friday you can go late because there's no 24-hour turnaround. You can still bring people in at 6 a.m. on Monday, and they were rewriting and shooting and rewriting. And the scene was me, Jack Plotnick, and the gal, Ileana Douglas, and I think there was 2 other people in it for some reason. And we were talking about making a movie with Drew Barrymore. And they wanted to cut the scene at the zoo. I said, you can't cut the scene at the zoo. If people go to the movies, they want to see panda bears get their throats slit. There's only like 4 left in the whole world. Now you're going to take the panda bears away from me? And then he goes, well, what if we lose the other girl with the limp? I go, you want Drew Barrymore naked without a limp? Are you out of your, do you remember all this?
Yeah.
And I was so tired. And then you pulled me aside and I didn't even realize it. And you said, let me tell you something, man. You're number 1 on the fucking call sheet. When these people get their call sheets, when they sign out at the end of the day, and when other people, guest stars, get their call sheets emailed to them or faxed to their houses, it says Action, and it says number 1, Jay Moore. And you're in there, and I don't know if you know you're doing it, but your energy is dipped, and you're given 90%. And if you take this shit up to 110%, we'll fucking be out of here in 45 minutes because they'll follow your lead. Because you're number 1. And I went, oh. And I went in there like, what are you talking about? Drew Barrymore naked without a limp? Are you trying to take the whole 45 minutes later, we're all in our cars going home. So you do put your money where your mouth is, where I had the speech. And you yelled at me for giving 85%. It wasn't like I was going like, man, fuck this. This sucks. Who cares? What do you mean? Why do you not want to kill the panda bear? But I was giving it my all that I had at that moment, and you were telling me to get another 20% of all from somewhere, open a fucking drawer and find it, make believe you have it, and make these people think you have it, and they're all just going to go, oh, we're all giving 100% at fucking 3 a.m. Good.
I mean, that's the hardest thing about being a manager is that you have to say things that, or you're in rooms with certain situations on a show and you have to say things that aren't popular, but it's the risk you take, and I never wanted to be a yes person. So speaking of never wanting to be a yes person, this probably is arguably another example of the Ray Romano, Jeff Ross scenario that I've been involved with, and it involved you.
Ross really missed his calling as a Gaddafi impersonator. He could have made a lot of money on the birthday circuit in Syria.
So
Gaddafi's from Libya. I know, but you got to, spread out.
So it's about 10 years ago, and I get a phone call that I think is a practical joke. Jay had just completed a 5-day stint as a guest host for Regis on Regis and Kelly. And Kelly was a new host on the show. She was pregnant at the time. And Jay was a natural, and he was just blowing up on it. Everybody
I had a good time. That was fun.
It was amazing. So the following Monday, I get a phone call that I think is a practical joke. It's my assistant tells me that Michael Eisner's on the phone. Now, Michael Eisner at the time then would be like
There's really no equivalent.
There's no equivalent. I mean,
he ran shit.
He was like at the highest level.
They own the Angels
of the game. Yeah, they own the Angels.
He was fucking telling you who was coaching third.
And I'm thinking I'm going to get on the phone and it's going to be somebody playing a practical joke for me. But I remember hearing an interview from him, and when he got on the phone, I knew it was him.
It was John DeResta calling from Linda Stassi's office at the New York Post.
And so he says, listen, I've been watching Jay host, a guest host. He's tremendous. And I'd like you to come into the office this week and let's talk about things for Jay in the future. He didn't specify anything that he wanted to talk about. Just said, come in. I called Jay. We set up the time. We went in. This guy's office was literally the size of Rhode Island. I mean, it was like the largest office.
Literally.
And it's at the Team Disney building where you go there and you see all the dwarfs holding up the building. Just as a side note.
Yeah.
I remember Dave Chappelle.
And they don't look too happy.
I had, after our 7th development deal in 8 years with Dave Chappelle, when we found out it wasn't going, we walked out of that building, and Dave looks up at the Goofy and all the little dwarfs holding up the thing, and he takes a sip of his cigarette and puff of his cigarette. He looks down, he looks around at all this Disney stuff. He looks at me and he says, "Barry, man, fucked by the mouse again."
Yeah, we met with Eisner. We went in, and then he was super nice.
Yeah, and so we meet with him, and
if he's listening to this, I would love for you to offer me work again. Where's my phone call? I did my fucking time. Wrecked my fucking body. No, Billy, you got a little out on yourself.
So we sit down there, and unbelievable to me, and obviously not as much to Jay, Michael Eisner said, "Listen, I've been developing a late-night talk show. I've decided, and I've convinced the board and everybody here at the company that I want to start a late-night talk show, and I want to compete with Dave and with Jay, and I made a decision that I want you to be the guy." And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is the greatest moment for an artist and a manager could ever hear. And the next words I heard coming through the airwaves was Jay saying, "I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to compete with Dave. I mean, that's not what I want to do. I mean, I'm not interested in that." And there was this back and forth.
Well, to his credit, and feeding more into Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, history meaning confluence of events, combined with confluence events, I had the good fortune of him saying, "Well, what would you want to do?"
I know, but I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
But before that, there was this back.
It wasn't contentious at all.
No, it wasn't contentious. But at one point in time, 1 hour into the meeting, he said this. He said, "Jay, I have a blank checkbook. I will write a check, whatever it takes. I want you. You're my guy. I want to start the franchise." And you said, "Listen, I'm
I feel like
so
Colin
grateful.
Turning down fucking Mike Myers' son now.
I really appreciate it. But what I'd really like to do, because I still like doing the movies, I'd like to do a show every Monday night or once a week where I can do a Letterman for sports. And, that's what I really want to do." And after this back and forth, Eisner realized that he wasn't going to get anywhere with you. And I realized that I was going to try to buy a handgun.
He even asked me in that meeting, what are your favorite numbers? How can I make this check look the best to you when it's framed? And I said, my favorite number is 37. And there was a check with 2 commas in it that kind of went, allegedly,
that's
37,
right.
37,
right.
37,
that's
37,
right.
0.
That's right.
Like,
so
I felt like Colin Quinn turning on Austin Powers. Something you're not taking into effect, Mike. I'm not completely uninterested. I couldn't see myself sitting. I want to be the guy being interviewed because I have something fascinating going on. It's a neat job to think about having a talk show, but the fact that on Thursday, my second guest, I got to talk to somebody from the fucking hills about their new country western album. I think I would have died of a drug overdose.
You could have, but the point being, there's another story like Ray and Jeff where the next person they go to is Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel Live has been on the air now for almost 10 years, and Jimmy Kimmel would not have that job if you had not passed on that gig.
Do you think he knows? I don't think he knows that.
I don't know if he knows it or not, but I
don't
know
think
it.
Anyone knows.
But I know it because I was there, and I know that.
And I watched my summer home go out the goddamn window, man.
Took me an extra.
So you're.
But this is the amazing.
I turned down Jimmy Kimmel.
You turned down Jimmy Kimmel Live. It wasn't Jimmy Kimmel Live. Then you just turned down.
Jay Moore Live.
It would have been Jay Moore Live. But what was most amazing about the meeting is that you convinced him after his biggest disappointment, because that's a guy who gets what he fucking wants. He doesn't take no for an answer.
Except tenure at ABC, but go on.
Except tenure at ABC. And so he always gets what he wants, and then he couldn't get what he wanted after 2 hours, and then you convinced him to give you what you wanted, And then he guaranteed you 50 episodes of television. He wrote a check, guaranteed it for 50 episodes, and wrote 37s in it because that was your favorite number.
25 episodes.
No, he guaranteed 50,
Oh, is that so?
and you were paid for 50 even though it didn't do 50.
You might want to turn those up over to me, cats. Interesting. Only got paid for 25. And that show turned out to be more sports.
Correct.
Which was important to me. And Patrice and I spoke about that. Patrice tried to play both sides of the fence, like, you got to do it for the love, you got to do it for the respect, and do what you want to do. But I said, yes, but the things I did, like more sports, where I lobbied hard and did the recruiter, I went into his living room and I flipped the fucking Catholic kid over to BYU or vice versa, is, you don't understand, Patrice. I got paid a tremendous amount of money to do that. And that's not why. I just said I'd host Watch What Happens Live because I love to do it. That'd be so much fun for me. But Patrice got it in his head almost like he had echolalia. He's like, so for you, it's all about the money. And I'm like, no, Patrice, but when you work, people pay you. So if you're going to do something you love and they're going to pay you, that doesn't mean I did it because they paid me. The idea in my mind went, this would be fun to do. And interviewing someone every night, when you watch The Tonight Show and you're like, who the fuck is this person? They're despicable. I would ladies and gentlemen, Rascal Flatts. Like that, to
Rascal
me,
Flatts is not despicable.
I would not, no, but just, you'd get to a point like, what? Now, sure, open checkbook, 2 boys, beautiful wife, nice house in the Palisades that I bought with Gary Unmarried money before Gary Unmarried got canceled. I'm in, Eisner. Give me a shout and a time machine. If you want to hit, give me a holler plus a pen and a pad. But more sports was very important to me. I love sports so much.
Because you created it, and you wrote it, and you starred in it, and you produced it.
Here we go. You fucking firing me up, cats. You're giving me the goddamn, Herb Brooks miracle speech here. If we pitched him 10 times, 9 times he says no. Not that day. Today, you're a sports talk show host. I got to do a sports monologue. I put fucking Slayer on television at 2 p.m. Disney execs started to get very hands-on, and that's when things went south quickly. I wasn't Johnny Corporate that I am today. I was the guy that told Suits, hey, why don't you stick to being a fucking suit and let the comedians run the comedy department over here? And they said, we're giving you money. You have to go do remotes. I said, I don't want to do remotes. And they said, you are going to do remotes. So we took their money for remotes. And as a fuck you to the Suits at the place at the time, we went to the gay rodeo in Burbank. And we spent and we went big. And we were there for 3 days. We sponsored a lesbian rodeo lady, like paid for her entire fucking setup. We bought that fucking lady horse chow for fucking 3 years because that was what the check had in it. And they thought we were going to go to, something more mainstream. And I remember I joined the Gay Olympics that day and I competed in something called goat dressing, which is you and your gay partner run out into the middle of the hay-filled whatever. It's like a hockey rink filled with hay. And one of you is assigned to tackle the goat. The second person has to put underpants on the goat. And when the underpants are on the goat, you say time. It's the gay roping of a calf. Put tighty-whities on a goat. Here's the problem. I'm not gay, and I don't have a partner. I'm at the gay rodeo, but they want to film me in this event. So they find me someone else's partner. A bear of a man, and he explains the whole thing to me. I forget his name. He's a delightful guy. And he explains to me, and he goes, so basically one of us has to tackle the goat, and one of us has to put underpants on the goat. And I just picture getting kicked in the face by this fucking spazzed out goat, freaked out the 2 people are wrestling it. So I decide, I'll tackle a goat. I go out there and fulfill every unfulfilled high school football, Division III football dream I've ever had, playing outside linebacker. and I literally feel this fucking goat's ribs push in when I hit it. I John Lynch this motherfucker. I fucking Ray Lewis the goat. Like, at the line of scrimmage, he puts a fucking Barry Sanders move on me, and I blow him up, and I'm holding on for dear life because I don't want to get kicked. And before I know it, this gay guy wraps him up in underpants. Here's the amazing thing. That bizarre meeting of two guys, he explains to me to go run out there, just tackle a fucking loose goat. Here's the most amazing part about the story to me. We didn't come in last. We were right in the middle of the fucking pack. There was people that say, don't forget, in 3 years, gay rodeo, how's your goat tackling? How's the underpants coming? Practicing on their acres in Portland, Oregon. No, I just showed up in jeans and boots and a smoker's cough, and I kicked that goat's ass, and my buddy put underpants on that damn goat, and out of, I think, 36 people, we took like 14th.
Well, I can't even discuss it. I want to talk about this more sports thing because for all of you out there, sometimes things can go, I have this expression sometimes I like to use,
Mishigosh?
You don't blame the dentist for your cavities, but what happened with more sports was a very unique thing that was out of Jay's control, and I don't know how he could have fixed it or I could have fixed it.
It happens all the time.
What happens sometimes in a company is there's some powerful people in certain aspects of companies, and then one believes in you, and they sign the deal to put you...
You're being too vague for these...
All right.
Listen, Michael... There's a president... We won't name names. The president of the network hires you to do a show. He leaves. A new president comes in. He wants to put his mark on the network and goes, well, what's all this leftover shit laying around? I don't want it.
Correct. And so with Jay, what happened was...
saved 8 minutes.
What happened is that Michael Eisner greenlit the show, but neglected to let the president of ESPN know that he was greenlighting the show and guaranteeing 50 episodes. And so the president of ESPN wasn't too happy about it. And
wasn't too happy with the way I spoke with him.
And right from the first meeting we had, I don't know if we've talked about this, but this is an amazing thing here. Our first meeting was at a hotel, private room in a hotel in New York. I can't remember where it was.
No, it was here.
Oh, it was here.
Beverly,
I'm sorry. Sorry, you're right.
Beverly Wilshire. And I got kicked out because I said hi to the Phoenix Suns. Remember that?
Yes, now I
said, Stefan, Coney Island, what's up? So you're going to have to leave. No, you don't understand. There's a ballroom upstairs with banners and food for me. Because I just signed a deal with Michael Eisner. You're kicking me out of my own party.
So we went up there. We thought there were going to be banners and everything like that. We got into this room. It was the most barren room you can ever imagine, with just like water and whatever. And it was a big table with a cloth over it, and there were 4 people in that room.
One guy, we're not naming any, I know we put your name on it, but me saying these names have probably cost me $800,000 in my life.
So was Jay...
People are spiteful. But one of the guys is the color commentator of fucking, of the Poker World Series. Yeah, how did he get that fucking, he was a fucking executive.
He changed,
wow, I would have bet on that hand.
He changed the pattern. That's how he did it.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right. Jesus, don't make a big deal out of it.
It's Jay and I.
It's Colin Quinn as Joe Pesci.
It's the president and the vice president at the time, or whoever the second in charge was.
And third and fourth in charge.
And third and fourth.
Yeah.
All right. So we're sitting there, and the president has a cell phone down in front of him. You know how sometimes you put your cell phone face down in front of you? The other guy has his cell phone face down in front of him. Every less than 30 seconds, he'd pick it up, look at it, put it down while we were talking. Pick it up, look at it. Must have happened during the first 30 minutes, constantly looking while we're talking. 30 minutes later, his second in command phone goes, the guy looks at it, he's like, will you shut that fucking phone off? I don't want to hear that do that one more time.
And his phone was vibrating.
His phone was 20 times more. Anyway. Yeah. So we're in the meeting, and the first question from this president to Jay was, listen, I would love to know, who's the first guest you would love to have on the show? And you said?
Hank Aaron.
And you said Hank Aaron because he's just intriguing, incredible, the plight that he went
through. He's a true American hero.
True American hero.
We should have off on his birthday. The man stands for class. He's the home run king. At that time, he was still the home run king.
And the president of ESPN, without missing a beat, cut Jay off and said, "You will never have Hank Aaron on your show. That's not what we want on this show. We want Kobe. We want Tiger. We want
Blink 182
we want Blink 182 and Sheryl Crow."
Why did he say he didn't want Hank Aaron? Hank Aaron's not going to move the needle.
Oh, that's right.
And he's wiggling his finger like a Geiger counter needle, meaning ratings. Like, this show will never work if you have Hank Aaron as a guest.
And he said,
and
listen,
I said, in all fairness, he said, we've heard the story. Yeah. He had horrible racism, death threats. He thought he was going to get shot from the upper deck. He broke the home run record. He broke Babe Ruth's record. We've heard it. And I said, in all fairness, man, across the table from me, but you've never heard it from me. I'm the X Factor here. Do you remember me saying that?
Yes.
I'm the X Factor in this equation. Hank Aaron, in all fairness, has never sat across from me.
And then he said, Jay, listen, Hank Aaron is not going to move the needle. Hank Aaron is not what America wants to see. And then it went totally haywire. It's like
Joe Sixpack.
No, it's Joe America. He says, listen, I know what Joe America wants. And Joe America
because I am Joe
Because
America.
I am Joe America.
And I said, you're Joe America. You're wearing a $6,000 suit with shoulder pads.
And the meeting
Cue
was
the sound of screeching brakes and a car going through the front window of a diner. At that moment, which I did not know, I thought I was making a stand for the common man. What Barry Katz knew was that this show was never going past 50 episodes.
And I was out on 57th Street looking for another handgun.
But here's what we got out of more sports. Ralphie May.
That's right.
KP Anderson is now executive producer of The Soup. He made The Soup incredibly fun again, and he's got an overall contract at E! We had Slayer on television. Oscar De La Hoya, when I asked him, he just won a Grammy. He was nominated for Grammy for his music, and people were killing him for his music. I said, will you make more music? And he took the CD out of my hand, and he smashed it into pieces.
I remember that.
Jeff Gordon said he won the Brickyard 400 because he had to pee so bad. He didn't care if he got in an accident. He wasn't taking his foot off the throttle. He won a race because he had to piss and shit. I'm not stopping. I have to get to the finish line to piss and shit. That's why I won the Brickyard 400. George Foreman said to me, what do you think of, I asked him, when you're across the ring and you're looking at your opponent? And dead serious, he said, I'm scared.
Right.
He said he was it's George Foreman. I'm terrified because that man trained to beat me up just like I trained to beat him up. We had incredible things on that show.
Incredible guest, Tom Brady you had.
Tom Brady was on. We had Al Sharpton do a fake commercial for hair product. What kind of hair products do you use, baby?
We got the greatest guest because it was Monday night. They were all in town. And
Bob Morton.
And it was a different audience. And back then, the people who put those people on, it's very similar to what's happening today with comedians, like the Bravo thing. They were booking their people on your show because it was a different audience that they were hoping to get, and they got it.
And the thing with the show, Bob Morton, we met with Morty, who did 20 years of David Letterman, nominated for an Emmy every darn year. We meet with them, I believe, at the Palms in Las Vegas. And if Morty runs your show, you're in. It's it. It doesn't get better, classier, or more legit. And he said to me, let me tell you something. If this show's going to work, it has to be a hang. Guests that never have no business being on this show have to want to come on the show. Fast forward to Alec Baldwin on the show. Dennis Leary agrees to be second guest. And then I'm introducing fucking Rakim. And Rakim works my name into, I got my man Jay Moores. Right. And I said, so do you want to do the show? And Morty goes, what the fuck do you think I'm in Vegas for? I like to gamble? Yeah, I want to do the show. That's why I'm here. You think I'm here for the scampi? He yelled at me. So those good things came out of more stories. I lost my mind and I said something I shouldn't have said on television. I called a man a name on a talk show. And in hindsight, I have the luxury of being divorced once. So any money I would have made would have went to that person anyway. So I get like this free black hole pocket where I have no remorse because I wouldn't have it right now anyway. However, I'm going to put my name on it.